Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. Listen, it's tier list time again. I know this is the second tier list video in a row, but this time we've got to talk about the civilizations in Age of Empires 4. If you guys don't know, there's a new patch that just dropped, and that's going to really shake up the meta going into the $20,000 tournament this weekend. So I figured it's the perfect time for a tier list, and I'm going to go ahead and make one right now. If you guys haven't checked out the patch, I'm going to leave a link below in the description so you guys can take a look. Click the link and check out the patch yourselves. I'm going to be mentioning some of the changes, of course, in this video because it's going to be important to consider them when talking about the civilizations and how they stack up against each other. Let's start at the Abbasid here with this tier list. And I do think that Abbasid going into this patch was the worst civilization. So before the patch, they had a win rate of like 42% or something like that across all ELOs, and 42% is absolutely horrendous. So Abbasid, not the best civilization, and they didn't receive any direct buffs. Now, that doesn't mean that they're just the same bad civilization that they were before. I never thought they were very bad, but I did think that other civilizations abusing of professional scouts and abusing their early game spikes just kind of destroyed Abbasid before it can get going. Now, professional scouts got nerfed quite heavily since the scouts carrying the deer carcass will be moving 35% slower, which is a huge deal for Abbasid. Furthermore, horsemen at ranks 2 to 4 will be getting an extra pierce armor, which is absolutely huge. So I think the horseman buff plus the professional scouts nerf will help Abbasid deal with a lot of the matchups that they weren't able to deal with before on a variety of maps. That means they are still going to be a bad civilization, but not quite as bad as they were. I'm going to put them at C tier. I think they're going to have some decent matchups if played correctly, and I don't think they're the most powerful civilization just because of these changes, but it will at least feel more fair playing against some civs like French, who usually go professional scouts, now there's some counterplay, versus English, who won't be able to lombo rush you as easily since your horseman will have an extra pierce armor. And so I do think that Abbasid are in a pretty good position with those changes to help defend against some of those civilizations and go into their power units, which is simply the men-at-arms or the knights in Castlage, or the crossbow archer with the siege spike, which is absolutely massive. All right, going into the Chinese now, the next civilization on the list. I'm going to put Chinese at an easy B tier. Listen, fire lancers were nerfed quite significantly. I know that. However, that was never the strongest unit that Chinese had. And it's crazy because the Chinese fire lancer was pretty overpowered. However, there's one unit that, in my opinion, is more overpowered, and that's the Chinese bombard, which received no changes, which is baffling to me because this unit single-handedly can carry every single Chinese late game, and it virtually has no counterplay if played correctly. So I honestly think Chinese is the best late game civilization, and their bombard is their best unit. So their composition will look like bombard plus anything to protect that bombard, and you're good to go. Their economy is also fantastic and remained unchanged, and I do think that Chinese, similar to Abbasid, will have better matchups against the strong civilizations, since all the other civilizations took a small nerf indirectly, and I think Chinese benefit a lot from that. So I'm actually debating about putting Chinese to A tier or keeping them at B tier. I think I'm going to put them at A tier, actually. They're very, very good, and I expect to see good things from the Chinese on most land maps, and most the strongest maps for them will be the closed land maps as well, like Hill and Dale. And those types of maps. Okay, next up is Delhi, and I think Delhi, you may be surprised by this, but it's going to go straight to A tier, even stronger than Chinese, and I'll tell you why. Delhi got almost all their bugs fixed, if not all their bugs fixed. I'm not sure. You can correct me in the comments below. I think all their bugs have been fixed, and that means that the research time on all the upgrades will be proper, and that means that their early game is very, very good. They can go for really cheap techs, which lets them get access to professional scouts, all the economy technologies, all the blacksmith technologies for free, and I do think that they come in quite quickly right now. Not only that, but even before the patch, Delhi were insanely good on hybrid maps, despite their spears not bracing, despite all the other bugs that this civilization faced. And so now they're just going to be even better on hybrid maps and even competitive on land maps, and I think this is going to be a very dangerous civ and a civ to watch out for. Their elephants have always been pretty good and pretty niche in some situations, so I think that option is still available. But all the other options are now on the table again, including the spearmen, which is now braced, like I said. And so I do think that Delhi had a strong kit before. The bugs held them back. Now that the bugs are no longer a factor, Delhi just becomes pretty insane. And I think it's a hard civilization to play, but in the right hands, it will be very, very good. Next up, we've got the English, and I would say this civilization got the biggest nerf, albeit it was an indirect nerf. The biggest indirect nerf, I should say, because Rus did get nerfed a lot harder. But English, because Horsemen for all civilizations got an extra Pierce armor at age 2, that really stops the English push, which is longbow and towers. That was the biggest push that a lot of players were going for with English. Now you almost always have to make a barracks with English. You just have to mix in some spears because Horsemen are simply too dangerous in the early game. And for that reason alone, they're going to be, I would say, bottom of B tier, maybe even C tier. I'm going to put them at C tier, to be honest, just because I honestly don't think it's going to be a good civilization going forward. I'll put it a little bit higher than Abbasid because it still has some good matchups, like into French, it still does pretty well. But I don't see the civ performing as good as before. And despite other civs getting a nerf to professional scouts, I do think that the Horseman buff was too big, and it will hurt English quite a lot. So I could be wrong on that, but I do think the civilization will struggle quite a bit going forward. Next up, we've got the French, and French remained virtually unchanged, except the professional scouts nerf, which is obviously it hurts them because French was one of the civilizations that loved to go for professional scouts. But listen, the civilization is still really good. You have great economy, you have great pressure in the early game, and those things remain unchanged. And for that reason, I'm going to put French, I'm going to put them slightly ahead of Chinese. I think they have really good land map potential. They have a variety of strategies that they can go for, and they're an overall fantastic civilization. They also do really well on water, so for me, French should be a good A tier. Next up, we've got the Holy Roman Empire. I'm going to put this civ at a solid, I'm debating about A tier as well, but I think they stand at a good B tier right now. Horseman buff helps them as well, like it helps all the other civilizations that don't have access to early knights. Helps them defend against the English rush, against anyone else who wants to attack them in the early game. But HRE have just always been a really strong civilization once they've been figured out, and they are a powerhouse on maps like Hillendale, the closed land maps, and if they get 3 relics, they're almost impossible to beat. So even on open land maps, if they're able to land 3 relics, they're insanely strong, and I can see the civilization being extremely good going forward. I will say though that it has some weakness in that if it doesn't get the relics, it's actually quite a bad civilization, and so it's not going to be like that A tier civilization that's just insane, but rather a very skillful B tier civ that can look amazing or can look really bad. Next up, we've got the Mongols, and despite the nerfs that the civ received, it's still easily S tier, and I will stick to this word. I would love to be proven wrong, guys. I really would, but there's just no way I can see that happening. Mongols are insanely cracked right now. Before the patch, after the patch, it's all the same story. All that they got hit by is towers now cost 100 wood instead of 70, and they don't start with the 50 wood that they did get beforehand, so they lose 50 wood to start. That only nerfs the tower rush. That's the only strategy that got hit with Mongols. Every other strategy will be the same minus 50 wood pretty much in the early game, which is very negligible. Their double producing OVU is still very insane. They have an amazing feudal age. The deer stones with the Yam network is absolutely insane for your economy and for your military units. Spamming towers across the map will still be possible, just cost a little bit more. And so I do think that Mongols are an amazing civilization, and that will not change. They're the king of hybrid maps, and they're very, very good on land maps as well. I see the civ still being completely S tier, completely broken. Kasich Khan is still amazing and still really overpowered, so make sure you're abusing that as much as you can as well in your games. So yeah, there's not much to say. I think Mongols, despite the nerfs, are going to be S tier. Although I will say, we probably will see less tower rush, because that did take a pretty big hit. Less wood at the start, and more expensive towers means that the push will be a lot slower. So tower rush will probably not be as popular in the highest levels, which is a good thing. Next up, we've got Rus, and this is the civ I'm the most confused about. I don't know where to put the civilization, but I think they're the civilizations that got hit the most. They were the #1 civ to use professional scouts. Now that that has been nerfed, they're still going to go for it in most cases, but it's not going to be as strong as it once was. And horse archers took a pretty big direct nerf, and so I don't think horse archers will be as insane as they were before, but rather just a good mobile unit that you can go for, but not a unit that's just completely insane and unkillable, pretty much. So I would probably say Rus is going to be bottom of A tier right now. I could be wrong, and they might be B tier, and they might be higher up. I don't think they're going to ever get to S tier, though. I think Mongols is undisputed S tier, but they could climb the A tier. But for now, I do think that they're bottom of A tier. They have some good plays, and they're pretty flexible, but they're basically the weaker version of French if they decide to play Feudal Age. And if they decide to go for the fast castle, the horse archers are really not going to be as strong. So I don't expect the civ to be doing too much, but it's still a good civilization if you want to pick that up in your game. So, and also, last thing I'll mention, they're really good on water maps like Boulder Bay as well, so keep an eye out for that. Of course, Rus is still very strong in those maps. that's going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this tier list. I'm gonna be having more diverse content going forward, of course, but it's just 2 back-to-back tier lists that I had to make. So thanks for watching, everyone. Nothing in the D tier, by the way, and I stand by that. We can easily remove that one. That's my tier list right now. Enjoy the tournament this weekend. It's a $20,000 tournament. I'll be competing in it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care, and bye for now.